Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome. To begin, I want to encourage you to just drop your name and where you're tuning in from into the chat, and something that you have let go of or refrained from doing recently that has been for your well-being. Anything that you can think of. I know for myself, I've been really trying to reduce my coffee consumption and just saying, okay, 1 cup a day, that's all I'm going to give myself. And just already noticing some of the benefits of that. And this will be kind of a topic we'll explore more later. So to begin, we'll start with a guided meditation and just finding any way to sit that feels comfortable for you, upright if that's possible. But really any way that you can feel present and relaxed for the next 15 minutes or so. You can close your eyes if that feels good for you, or you can always just rest your gaze on the floor in front of you. And we'll begin by taking a few longer, slower, deeper breaths. And then just allowing the breath to return to normal. Just allowing the body to breathe all on its own. And noticing the sense of solidity that's here in this body. Deep in the bones, there's this great refuge for the mind and something which is relatively stable. So just sensing into this earth element quality within. Same elements and minerals of the earth are here within this body. As you allow the mind to rest on the rhythm of the breath, also noticing the sense of cohesion and togetherness here in the body, sense of fluidity, unifying the mind in the body, and noticing the flow of energy from the tips of the toes and the feet all the way up through the head. And also noticing the sense of warmth within the body or temperature, perhaps a coolness on the skin, perhaps a warmth coming from the chest and the heart. This body's innate capacity to regulate temperature. This fire element of warmth, and the interdependence we have on the sun and the star that we revolve around. And then finally this wind or air element. With each breath, we take in air from the surroundings. With each exhalations, we release what's no longer needed. So noticing this continual interdependence of the body with the elements of the world and the atmosphere around us. We can allow this wind element, the breath, to be the anchor for this meditation. So just wherever you notice the breathing, allowing the mind to settle in. Thoughts can happen, the mind may wander, and always just returning to this breath. Spending the next few minutes just allowing the rhythm of the breath to naturally massage and release any tension, any unnecessary tension that might be in the body. Whether that's in the forehead or the face, or the chest or the belly, or even down through the legs, the feet. Allowing this exhalation in particular to soften and release what is not needed in this moment. Now that the mind is settled and is rooted here in the body, here in the nervous system, bringing to mind anything which you've done in this life, which has been for your benefit, actions of mind or in daily life. Perhaps something you've refrained from or let go of has been for your benefit and for the benefit of others. And this is a way of using the thinking mind to bring something to the surface, to recognize this wholesome capacity of the heart and of the innate ability to do what is good and what is beneficial in this life. So just bringing this to mind and taking it to heart, allowing the heart to recognize skillful actions which have been done. Reflecting in this way can help to counterbalance some of the negativity bias of the mind. And then just letting it go. And coming back to the heart, to the body, to the breath, as it is. Just recognizing any impact of recollecting or bringing this to mind. Skillful actions, wholesome actions, virtuous deeds have an impact on the heart, on the mind of ourselves and others. And recollecting and bringing this to mind can help reduce the inner critic, can help reduce self-judgment. Now bringing to mind the actions of someone you know, the actions of someone else which have been for your benefit, something for which you are grateful. Surely in this life someone has been good to you, has done something which has been for your benefit. And so just bringing this action to mind, and taking it to heart. This is a practice of gratitude and appreciation. And also recognizing the connection between wholesome actions, kindness, and the quality of our own minds and heart. Can be a way of reducing fixation on what is not good or what needs to change. We can counterbalance this by bringing to mind what is wholesome, our own actions, the actions of others. And to take them to heart. And so we'll spend these last few minutes in silence, simply being here, simply breathing, and taking in this quality of presence of the mind. And the impact of these recollections on the heart, the emotional body. And so whenever you're ready, allowing your eyes to open, coming back into your space. And I'm going to share some thoughts today on what is called sila, or virtue, in the early Buddhist teachings. So the Buddhist path is generally divided into three rough categories: sila, or virtue, or you could say ethical sensitivity. And then samadhi, or the meditation practices, concentration and mindfulness. And then there's panya, which is the wisdom or discernment aspect of the path. And so virtue, or sila, in the most simple way of stating it, just refers to refraining from causing harm and cultivating what is skillful or beautiful in this life. It is the second of the 10 Paramis as well. And it's connected to this word ahimsa, which you may have heard before, was made quite famous by Mahatma Gandhi as a way of referring to nonviolence, nonviolent action and activism. And this non-harm is said to be the foundation of the practice, the foundation of a meditation practice. The idea being that it's difficult to sit down and concentrate and cultivate if the mind has been engaging in actions like causing harm through speech, or physical harm to others, or harm to oneself through things like drugs and substances. Then it's quite difficult to practice concentration. If the mind hasn't been engaging in these behaviors, there's a residual impact on the mind, which makes it difficult for the mind to settle, to cultivate things like compassion. So rather than being commandments which are handed down from above, Gil Fronsdal, a well-known meditation here in the United States, refers to these as kind of a way of practicing ethical sensitivity. And this is deeply connected to mindfulness, is bringing mindfulness into actions and recognizing, is this helpful, what I'm doing, or is this actually causing harm to myself or to others? And these are, Buddhist practices, but the encouragement is to consider how it resonates for you. We're going to talk about what are called the 5 precepts. And so the encouragement is to take each one in and see how it lands for you. Does it resonate with your own set of values, or how does it resonate for you? So the first of these 5 is abstaining from killing, abstaining from taking life, and that is for humans and for non-human creatures. The idea being that if someone is taking the life of others or killing animals, things like that, this causes harm to those around us and doesn't create a sense of safety. So refraining from doing so has a positive impact on the mind. If one is murdering, it's difficult to meditate. And refraining from doing so for non-human or for human creatures allows for a certain degree of peace within the mind. And now this doesn't mean that everyone has to go out and become vegan if they want to follow this. I had spent time in Southeast Asia and in monasteries, and the monks actually eat what is offered in most cases. So sometimes that means meat, sometimes it's not meat. So the encouragement is to consider, how can one refrain from causing harm? And maybe food is part of that. And then there's also this aspect of the even smaller creatures in our surroundings, the insects and things like that. I was at a meditation retreat at a retreat center here in the U.S. and walking around, and there's little circles that say IRS, which refers to insect removal service, and there's a little cup. So it's a way of scooping up the bugs, the spiders, things like that, taking them outside rather than, stomping them or killing them. And so although maybe it's a little bit tedious, it was a practice that I undertook while I was there. And you could see everyone else at this retreat center walking through the hallways, at night before going to bed, sometimes taking spiders and things like that outside. It's a little bit of an extra effort, but it's a way of creating a sense of safety and just really taking this precept, you could say, bringing it to life. And now the flip side of this precept is cultivating compassion, recognizing that all beings do want to live, want to thrive, and resonating with the pain and harm that's caused, and wanting all beings to be well. The second of these 5 precepts or ways of cultivating virtue is refraining from taking what is not given. And this is a way of creating a sense of trust and safety within community. This is kind of a central theme of the 5 precepts, is creating a sense of protecting community, creating a sense of safety, not only for ourselves, but for those around us as well. And again, there's an impact on the mind. Taking what's not given. I'm a person in recovery from addiction, and things like shoplifting used to be a regular practice for me. And just recognizing the impact that had on the mind, the fear, maybe there's a rush and exhilaration of getting away. But over time, just kind of some of the shame and the fear and the impact of that on the nervous system, made it nearly impossible to sit down and meditate and find some degree of peace. And I also want to recognize, economic disparity and survival. And, for some people, maybe stealing or taking from corporations is what they do to live and to survive. So I don't want to disparage that. And recognize that any of these is a practice, and to also recognize that we live within a system that can be unfair here. And the corresponding side, or the virtue of this, generosity, being able to offer to others, whether that's material or our time as well, being able to give freely. The third of these precepts is refraining from causing harm through sexuality. And I think the early Buddhist teachings here are quite progressive and quite flexible. And the general idea that this is just between 2 consenting adults. It's kind of a bare minimum. It's where consent is really important. And so this means refraining from engaging with sexuality with minors. It encourages against dishonesty and infidelity in relationships, and causing any harm through sexual acts. This is a huge problem and something that can leave really serious harm on others. The idea being, if human beings can collectively take up a precept like this, it can not only be for the benefit of our own mind, but of course the benefit for others, and another way of creating a certain sensitivity. In the early Buddhist teaching, there's no mention of it having to be between a man and a woman or in a monogamous relationship. So it's, I think, quite a great foundation for how to engage in sexuality in a way that can be quite progressive in non-heteronormative relationships, perhaps even in non-monogamous relationships. The idea being just consensual, consent, and non-harm. And the flip side of this precept being contentment. So seeing how one can engage in sexual relationships with a certain degree of not being attached to it, and not leading to some of this endless craving that can happen through things like addiction to sex, which can again cause a certain degree of harm. And a key aspect, even in sexuality, is healthy communication, which leads to the fourth. So refraining from causing harm through speech. And so this refers certainly to honesty, but it also recognizes that honesty is not in and of itself always the most skillful way to engage in speech. So there's some nuance here as well. So some of the other factors to bring to mind is the way I'm speaking, is it divisive? Is it creating a rift between others? Things like abusive speech. This is something I see so much as a therapist, clients who have had partners who are maybe not necessarily physically abusive, but verbally abusive, which can cause so much harm over time. Or diminutive, talking down to others, so refraining from all these ways of speaking. And then even just idle chatter, just rambling on sometimes, talking when not needed, and recognizing that this can also be kind of exhausting after a while, and just seeing how one can refrain from speaking when not needed. This doesn't mean we can't connect with others and have small talk, but just starting to notice when, I know for myself sometimes I'm talking just to fill space. And then beyond just honesty, things to take into consideration before speaking that the Buddha taught were, is it true, of course? Is it timely, though, also? Is this the right time to say what I'm saying? Is it useful? Is what I'm saying actually going to be useful, or am I just saying it for the sake of saying it? And is it coming from a place of goodwill? So these can be a lot of things to take into consideration. And again, there's just a practice. And the flip side of this being honesty and congruency, having a sense of congruency between the inner world and what I'm saying. Is there a connection between how I'm presenting myself, what I'm saying, and how I'm feeling on the inside? This can be quite important and a way of expressing and finding congruency there. And so finally, the fifth one is refraining from taking intoxicating substances. The idea being that substances can often lead to heedlessness and detract from a sense of mindfulness and presence of mind. And so rather than me saying here, everyone should never drink or take any sort of a drug again, the encouragement is to explore your relationships to substances. And are there ways that alcohol or any other kind of a drug is detracting from this innate sense of clarity that's in the mind, this ability to be mindful, to be here, to be present? I think for many people, maybe just having an occasional glass of wine or something like that doesn't necessarily lead to a high degree of heedlessness, but the Buddha's teachings were to see if it's possible to refrain altogether. And if not, seeing what substances there are that might be really leading to some cloudiness of the mind. More and more I'm seeing studies of the impacts of things like alcohol or cannabis that really have a negative impact on things like sleep. So maybe if it's not necessarily even a serious issue, could be having some milder impacts on clarity or quality of sleep or presence of mind. And so the flip side of this aspect of mindfulness, of refraining from taking substances, is mindfulness. So the idea that when there's this clarity of mind and not being intoxicated, the mind can have a greater degree of clarity. So to review and go back through them, we have refraining from killing, and the flip side of that being compassion. Refraining from taking what's not given, and the correlative other side of that being generosity. Refraining from causing harm through sexuality, and cultivating contentment. Refraining from harmful speech, and honesty and congruency that can go along with that. And then finally, refraining from substances and how this can support greater degree of mindfulness. I think this is great practices to explore. And when people ask about how to cultivate and how to practice off the cushion, I think this can be a great way to practice. So thank you for taking the time to listen. As always, if this has been beneficial, just encourage you to subscribe and to continue coming back. So thank you, and be well.